Hello again. I want to tell you something about the brain today, a very special organ, my second favorite organ. It's the organ that I have in this jar. This is a human brain. It's an adult. I don't know if it's male or female, and I don't know the ethnicity of it. I don't know where it went on vacation, how many languages it knew, or what was on its mind when it was dying. But you can purchase these, or you used to be able to purchase them back in the 80s from Carolina Biological Supply. So that's what I did. Today you can't get a whole brain, there are not enough of them. And you can get a slice of them and then preserve it in a thin piece of plexiglass. This was about $450 back in 1984 when I got it, and now it costs over $1,000 for a small slice. This brain, fundamentally, is no different than your liver or your spleen or your heart, but your spleen doesn't have ambitions and your liver can't feel emotions. This organ is put together in a very special way that allows it to be alive and to create you, the consciousness of you. This organ is made up of carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and hydrogen, all the elements that all the other organs are made up of. But this mere matter somehow is organized in a way that it's conscious, it's self-aware. And how does mere matter become conscious matter is what's called the hard question in the neurosciences. So this brain it looks larger actually than our brains because it's been sitting in fluid, and like a dry sponge it absorbs that fluid over the years. And it's been sitting in a plexiglass container which acts as a magnifying glass. Your brain is maybe 2.5, 3 pounds, about this big, and it has the consistency of pudding, so it's a very fragile organ. For example, compare it to the heart. If you ripped the heart out of my chest, as my ex-wife did 20 years ago, it would retain its shape if you put it on the desk, but not with the brain. If you take the brain out of someone and put it on a desk, that brain will sort of ooze down into this two-dimensional shape. It's very fragile, and so we need a skull, but more importantly, we need a system of pressurized fluid around the brain which compresses the brain and holds it in place. So when I shake my head around or bang it against something, up to a point, the brain won't be injured. It'll remain intact. When you look at the brain, when you visualize the brain, we're visualizing looking at the outside of it, or that's called the cerebral cortex. And it all looks the same. But it's not just undifferentiated porridge. This is the notion of modularity. There are different modules that make up the cerebral cortex. One module for vision is back here. Another module for hearing is over here, the temporal lobes. The occipital lobe, the temporal lobe. The frontal lobe is associated with planning and motor behavior, and the parietal lobe is associated with sensory perception. There's a couple of fallacies about the brain that I wanted to clarify, and this is my permission to you to give people the finger if they say this in a bar situation or somewhere out there in the community. They might say to you, oh, I only use 10% of my brain. What if I use 12%? How smart I would be. That's permission to give them the finger, and the reason is because that's not true. We're using 100% of the brain 100% of the time. Even when you're sleeping, the brain is active. In fact, more active in certain kinds of sleep. If a part of the brain stopped functioning, all right, it would mean that there was a stroke there was damage there, okay? So your whole brain is active all the time. Now it's true, if you were listening to music, then the temporal lobes, the part of the lobes that are associated with auditory processing, would be a little bit more active than other lobes. But it's all active all the time. That's fallacy number one. Fallacy number two is this. You're in a bar, you're drinking, and you comment after your 6th drink, you comment to a patron, I've lost 10,000 neurons today, and they'll never grow back again. That's simply not true. Again, permission for a very large finger to be directed toward the patron. The brain, in fact, does repair itself to a certain extent. If you're a youngster, the repair is much more complete than someone my age. But it does repair itself. Neurogenesis is constantly happening. It has to happen. Just for you to remember stuff means that there are structural changes taking place in your brain. So that's a fallacy that it doesn't repair itself. Now, again, it's not a perfect repair, much like if you get a cut to your skin, for example. And if I use my grandson as a subject, no, Papa, no, and I cut his skin, it will heal. It will heal faster than my skin will heal. Maybe he won't even get a scar, and maybe I will. Okay, so the older you are, the less perfect the repair mechanisms are, and that includes your brain.